We always want to skip the hard phase. We want to skip the season of the messiness where we learn and where we grow, whether it's finances, whether it's our health, whether it's our relationship, even with ourselves.
Stress is the inflammation that robs us of life, energy, and happiness. Our typical solutions for gut health and hormone balance have let a lot of us down. We're over-medicated and underserved. At The Less Stressed Life, we're a community of health-savvy women exploring solutions outside of our traditional Western medicine toolbox and training to raise the bar and change our stories. Each week, our hope is that you leave our sessions inspired to learn, grow, and share these stories to raise the bar in your life and home. I have a complicated history with coffee. I love it, but sometimes it's made me jittery, anxious, and even worse in my skin because of the mold that can be present in lots of coffee. A couple of months ago, I tried Everyday Dose, which combines organic coffee, grass-fed collagen, lion's mane for focus, and has 80% less caffeine than regular coffee. The results have been impressive, and that's after trying several other similar different coffee products that just didn't meet my snobby coffee standards. Here's what I noticed ever since I started using Everyday Dose as my daily coffee 2 months ago. My daily focus and concentration are better because lion's mane is a nootropic that helps with brain clarity and focus. But unlike other products, Everyday Dose actually tastes like coffee and not like mushrooms, which usually taste like dirt or sit at the bottom of the cup. I've noticed I'm not jittery, which makes sense because there's less caffeine and they're third-party testing for mold or mycotoxins, which is a big deal, so I feel good instead of crappy from my coffee. And 3, I've had no change in mood or energy right before my period starts. It's pretty common that my mood is apathetic and I'm annoyed by humans a day or 2 before the start of my menstrual cycle. But oddly, since I've been doing this daily nootropic coffee, I've had no mental dips like I had before. So if you want to try Everyday Dose, do me a solid and support the podcast by using my special link, everydaydose.com/less stressed, and you'll get 5 extra sample packs in your order. There's no coupon code, so you'll just have to type in everydaydose.com/less stressed or grab the link from the show notes. And let me know if you love it or drop me a note or tag me on Anti-Inflammatory Nutritionist on Instagram. Today on The Less Stressed Life, I have a dear friend. I wish you could see on camera. She's such a stunner. Katy Saltsman is a nutritionist, personal trainer, and a podcaster on a mission to change the conversation around health for women, taking a total body approach with mental, physical, and emotional health, helping you understand your body so you can take your goals, self-worth, and life to the next level. That mini bio speaks to my soul so much. We recently changed the tagline. Probably people are hearing this for the first time. We recently changed the tagline on the podcast to helping you heal yourself because I felt like that was the right approach and right fit. And I did not even read your bio before I read it out loud to everyone, if I'm just being honest. So I really love that that's what it says. And I want to tell you a little bit about Katy before I let her speak the rest of the time. So Katy, I've known for about a year. And then I really got to know Katy. I've seen you, I don't remember how many times, if I had stopped to see you in Denver and then we had to get ice cream and we did all the things. And then we ended up rooming with each other in Texas. That's what it was. So anyway, I've seen you in person multiple times, getting to know you a little bit better every time. And this girl is a force. She's very inspirational. She loves on this woman and she's got an incredible story. So anyway, I hope we delve into all of those things today. Welcome. And I'm glad to have you here, Katy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I know we want to talk about high performance and feeling like everything is going fine, but I always think that telling your own story in whatever capacity, I know there's so many versions of your story you could share. So whatever you want to share, I want to hear about kind of what Katy was doing and then some story time pieces and then how that's really evolved into the women that you're helping now. And tell me about the things so we can get to know you. So we like you, we trust you, all those things before we get into some of this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like Krista said, there's a lot of different versions, a lot of different layers of my story. But the base of my story is really just a girl trying to fit into a box that really wasn't meant for her in life and trying to do different things to really try and people please, I guess would be the best way to put it. And I really started just peeling back the layers of myself and my life. And I've just evolved and stepped into this whole new woman with my business, with my personal life, but specifically business with women I struggled my whole life with self-worth, with self-confidence, with never feeling good enough, with truly like a hate relationship with my body, feeling like slapping a diet Band-Aid on that was going to fix everything. And what I ended up with was an overly stressed body and mind, and a girl who lost her cycle and her hair started falling out because she was just trying so hard to fix what was going on internally with physical. So what I really like to do with women is I'm a personal trainer. I'm a nutritionist. I love health. I love teaching women how to move their body, get stronger, eat healthy, but that's not all of it. And that's not really going to fix. A lot of us need to dive deeper into more mental and emotional work to get the whole piece of the puzzle coming together. Because with your health, if you're not addressing the mental and emotional with the physical, what you're going to get is only temporary. And I think, Krista, you and I are both not interested in temporary fixes for women.
Oh, you reminded me of so many things. First up, I don't know which order to go in, but I'm going to go reverse and go and work backwards. So
I saw you writing as I was talking.
Oh yeah. I like to type ferociously. So I had a client recently ask me, and this is where like you kind of read into the deeper meaning of every question that someone asks, right? They said, what would you say to someone who's not really liking their current career and has always been interested in nutrition once they get the certification? And I said, well, I could tell you some feelings about this, but this is really still going to boil down to what else is going on? What do you want your day to look like? What is your purpose? And I know like I have been so humbled recently because I've been doing these kind of women's retreats with some local girlfriends. And what really struck me as a 65-year-old woman talking about a near-death experience when she was a teenager and been trying to find her purpose ever since. And so in that same vein, that just made me stop and think about how we are as people. And what I ultimately said to that client was, even if I tell you this or this is a good certification, you're still going to have to deal with the underlying stuff that makes you feel like you have a gap in your life after you invest or spend money in this thing that's filling that you think you need to become whatever you want to be. Does that make sense? Like we often, and when we do this as women, we go spend money to fill holes in our life, don't we? Right?
Yeah. It's a coping mechanism.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
You brought up people pleasing. And so this same retreat that I'm giving, I forget until here I am talking to you. I use you as an example in this speech. I say my friend Kate, because I talk about an evidence of reinvention and we can reinvent ourselves. And I talk about like multiple very different versions, like a one sentence conversation of like this person reinvented themselves, this person reinvented themselves. And when you talk about this, when you talk about wanting to change your body, if you want to change your physical self, you're going to have to change your mental self. So anyway, I know that's what we're talking about, but I just think about, have you ever pulled out your people pleasing self in your body? Cause I call mine Dick. My people pleasing version is Richard.
Name it. I love it. I need to do that. But you're right. I feel like so many women are unhappy in their life and they just like, they want to put this Band-Aid on it. Like we all have coping mechanisms of different things that we're doing. For me, my coping mechanism was my diet, was changing my body, was control over that. That was going to make me happy. For some women, it's, the scrolling, the numbing, the shopping, whatever it might be. And until you start to shift your life and the way you show up in life and evolve that, you're never really going to find it. Just like you said, reinventing yourself. I mean, I really did that, 2 years ago, and it was the best thing I've ever done. And not all women have to do it as extreme as me. Krista knows I literally drove from Detroit to Denver across the country and just started a new chapter of my life because that's what was necessary for me. But I want women to know that they can do that in their own life in the smallest ways.
And I love that story, really. And there was obviously pain with that probably still hurts to hear and talk about. Was when you moved, you lost all of your things. And so you didn't really have a choice. And it was the worst time of your life. And then later it became kind of the best time, right?
It was a cool moment. Like just, I guess to take it back a little bit, like I had got out of a pretty nasty relationship. And my biggest goal was I didn't want to repeat the same thing. And I ended up moving across the country. Long story short, hired a moving company. They stole all my things. And I was left in a city where I knew nobody, in an empty apartment with an air mattress and myself. And what was cool about that moment, and this is sort of my tagline that I say now, is when you lose everything, you gain the ability to create the most amazing life. And that was my choice. I had to face my shadows. I had to face the patterns and the habits that I had created that were no longer serving me. And I either had the opportunity to completely have a breakdown, which I did. There were many breakdowns to breakthroughs, but I could have gone a different direction where I only use coping mechanisms. And I said, like, I'm 35 years old and that I'm no longer going to do that in my life. This is my breaking point where I create the most amazing life out of nothing. And so that's what I set out to do.
It's a big story and I love it. And I love seeing you win on the other side of it, which is why I like this story. It's not because I liked seeing you in pain.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Krista met me when I was going through it. Like I wouldn't even have a mattress.
She looked good, but she was dying on the inside, which, by the way, so often we can look like we have it all put together on the outside and shit is falling apart on the inside, right? And how do you start to, depending on our personality type and how we present to the world, we can be so good at covering up the parts of us that we don't want other people to see, right? So, in that same vein, when we're trying to go fill those canyons or those holes or those gaps that we're feeling in our life and our purpose, whatever it is, we may shop, we may scroll, as you said, right? We may numb. And I think the question is, to me, I know that sometimes when you're outside of the bottle, you can see that a little bit better. How do you figure out or find the mess that's inside holding you back? Like, how do you start to unpack that and realize that, oh, these behaviors are the things that are keeping me stuck? How do you start to unpack that with women?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard thing to do because we live in a society where there are so many distractions and we're wired right now to distract ourselves, to open up social media, it's just like constant scroll we get ads all the time. We're shopping, we're on the move, and like rarely do we just sit with ourselves. And I think getting to know yourself at a core level is number one, because when you get to know yourself, when you get to sit with yourself, when you get to sit with who you are, you start to understand why you do things. If you don't understand why you're doing these coping mechanisms and what you're trying to numb from, you're never going to be able to do it. I always say the more we feel, the more we heal. And we've learned to not feel. So we're never really truly healing. And when you can learn to feel through that, and that means like I had to go through a big period where I was healing from trauma, and it felt like it was getting so much worse before it got better. But that's how you know you're doing the work. When you're actually like all the things that you've stuffed down for so long, when you're actually having to work through them, it's going to feel worse before it gets better. But the number one thing to do is get to know yourself. Take time to get to know yourself more. Take time to turn off all screens and like sit with yourself and your feelings so you're able to start to shift things.
I want to, before we move from that point, that is a concept that someone may hear and say, but how do I actually do that? So when we say get to know yourself at a core level, and you said turn off screens, remove distractions, what are some other tangible ways to help someone dig in and get uncomfortable with trying to look at themselves in a different way or look at their true self?
Yeah, I think learning your patterns and habits is really important. And I think two of the best ways to do that are in the morning and at night. Look, throughout the day, we're busy, we're checking things off the list, trying to get to know yourself and feel things in that moment is probably not the best case, because especially like I work with women that are a lot of like high performers and go-getters, and being like, take time in your day to get to know yourself. It's just not going to happen. I really like to optimize mornings with women. I think your morning is your superpower. And if you can set the boundary of not picking up your phone for 30 minutes in the morning or checking your email or whatever, and not doing that for 30 minutes before bed, those are the two best ways to not only set the tone for your day, but also get to know yourself a little bit better, to unwind, to kind of work through the uncomfortable things.
How about the conversation of when people are numbing from a feeling, would you take this back to patterns? Like, how do you start to figure out what are you trying to numb from?
Yeah, I would absolutely take it back to patterns. Sometimes we don't even realize what we're doing. We don't even realize what we're numbing from. But I think the biggest thing to understand is that if you are always left with the same outcome, that's not a somebody else problem. You know what I mean? That is a you problem. For example, I got out of a divorce and quickly got into a really toxic relationship. And for me, it was, I got out of that relationship and was like, I don't want to repeat this pattern again. And while there are things that weren't my fault and were out of my control, being in that relationship, like there was something that attracted me to that. And that was me. You know what I mean? That was me wanting to fix other people and wanting to make other people happy. That was me not wanting to work on myself and wanting to help other people and thinking I can fix them and it would create happiness in me. Right. But I didn't realize that till I was out of it. And I know not everybody is in the situation where like they can just like be by themselves. You know, they have kids, they have a family. I totally understand that. I had to get to know who I was. I committed to 16 months of being single. Well, I had said 1 year, but I ended up being single for like 16, 17 months to date myself, to get to know myself, to focus on connection in my life. And I think you have to decide what's important to you. What are you missing in your life? Are you missing that true connection with other people because you have numbed for so long? And you have to go do that. Are you really hiding trauma that has been stuffed down for so long? Then like, join the club. We're all human. There's 7 billion of us. Like, it's going to therapy. It's getting in the room with other people. Like, I hired a therapist. I hired a self-discovery coach at the same time for 6 months and worked heavily with them. It's saying that like your happiness is not optional. Like, we all deserve to feel healthy. We all deserve to feel happy and thriving. And the majority of women do not feel like that. And you have to really figure out like what you are missing in your life to be able to do that.
I want to underline something that you said, which I thought was so helpful. What attracted me to that? Well, a few things. If you are left with the same outcome, that's not a somebody else problem. That's a you problem. I actually had this conversation with a client recently because sometimes people come in the door and they want to talk about weight. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm not your person to talk about your weight. If you want to talk about all the functional things that could lead to that, perhaps. So it came up like, so this person said,
I'm your person.
But yeah, exactly. Go to Katy. This person came in and this was a gentleman, and he had told me at the onset, he said, well, I'm trying to lose weight. My doctor's not doing it for me or something. That's not the exact words, but that's how I interpreted it. I'm like, ooh, juicy. And then of course that presented again later, like, hey, I'm not losing weight. I'm like, hey, remember those things that have to happen before you could even be comfortable or your body could feel good enough to lose weight. But anyway, if we're left with the same outcome, it doesn't have to be in body composition, right? It could be you just use it relationship. I like to think about the 5 F's, right? Like family, right? Friends. So different types of relationships, finances, fun, and maybe it's faith. But anyway, like I like to think about these are like different areas of life where people have to kind of agree about things. So when I think about when we're trying to figure out where are we trying to compensate, what attracted me to that, you said me trying to fix others versus fix myself. Really insightful, right? Because so often, like as soon as you said that, it made me think of so many examples, either for myself or for someone I love, where for sure, right? It's like we're trying to just band-aid it by projecting. We're all projecting our own wounds inside of us. Right.
Absolutely. And we're trying to get these quick hits and these quick fixes. And I'm not even just talking about diets. I'm talking about with everything, with all the things that you just named. Somebody used the analogy once, and I love it, is that they told me that I'm skipping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. I'm trying to search for these like quick fixes. So an example of that, if we're talking about diets, would be like women wanting to go vegan when they're not even eating plants in their diet in general, or women wanting to go on some crazy 30-day diet when they're picking up their phone first thing in the morning. They're not getting any movement in, they're drinking coffee for breakfast. It's like, there's so many amazing things you can be doing in your life. And we always want to skip the hard phase. We want to skip the season of the messiness where we learn and where we grow, whether it's finances, whether it's our health, whether it's our relationship, even with ourselves. I wanted to skip that phase. I wanted the quick hit of happiness. So I was instantly jumping into another relationship in the honeymoon phase, trying to fix that person instead of understanding what was going on with myself. And so I love that analogy in every aspect of life, is like, stop skipping over $100 bills to pick up pennies, because you will never get to where you want to be. You'll never create wealth in any aspect doing that.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good one. Okay. I know we're talking about this in context of how it manifests in our body sometimes, or how we feel about our body. So here's something that I saw on your podcast, which we haven't mentioned. You have a podcast, and right now it's called Crying Burns Calories. It's been called that since the beginning of time, but I know you are feeling to evolution. So I'm just opening the door. I don't know if it'll always be named that or not, but it's I love, like, you go after all these hard topics. And I saw a title that said, that I think was so valuable: I want to heal my relationship with food, but I don't want to gain weight. Ooh, yes. Loaded, right?
Yes.
Like, okay. So let's say I am this high performing woman. I am doing all the things, and it has occurred to me that what I'm doing is not working, and I'm succeeding everywhere except for like in my body stuff. And I realize I must have some healing to do, or some things to do. And I realize I must heal around that, but I don't like the idea of gaining weight. Let's walk through what has to happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a topic that I did. And the reason I did it is because it was a real life topic that I went through
Mhm.
when I got out of that massive, like terrible relationship and had moved across country and shifted my life. I ended up being under an immense amount of stress under my body. And I, again, lost my cycle. My body quickly started showing signs of big stress. I got blood work done. I had like super, super low progesterone. I had no energy. Like even getting out of bed was hard. And so I couldn't be the trainer that I wanted to be. I couldn't be doing strength training 4 to 5 times a week. I couldn't be in a calorie deficit. Those were not my goals at the moment. My goal was, how do I feel healthy again? And the only option to feel healthy again was to be able to take a step back from the things that I thought were health, which was really physical. Now I realize that my health is so much more, but in that process, I had to put on about 10 or 15 pounds. And that was a really hard thing for me, especially as a trainer. I just think in this society, when you view somebody as a trainer or a nutritionist, like you feel judged on your body. And I realized a lot of that I was putting on myself, but it was a tough phase for me to go in, but it was a necessary phase. And it's the reason I did this podcast, because I work with women so often that we're so hyper focused on weight. We're so scared to see that go up a pound, but it's having the honest conversation that if you've been doing all the things that you think are going to get you weight loss, and yet you've been consistently staying the same or maybe consistently gaining weight over time, it takes breaking down the barrier of understanding that weight can't be your focus. And that will happen if that's your goal. That will happen if we can put the other things in place, if we can focus on the stress and the sleep and the foundations and slowing down and nervous system work. But the weight will never get to where you want it to be if you don't do that, right? If you don't take that time in that season. It's a season that none of us want to go through, but it's a necessary season to set our health up for success. If you want to be one of those women that naturally lives at a healthy weight and doesn't weigh themselves and doesn't obsess and it becomes easy, you have to understand that you've primed your body for the opposite for the last 15 years, which means it's going to take some work on the front end to be able to get there.
Well, I'm happy to have you unpack that with us. But what I think about as you talk about this, is it feels like we have worked against our body for so long that it takes some relearning, resetting, understanding, slowing down to work with it. There's a couple ways to think about this. And I understand this as well. I had this period of pretty elevated cortisol. And when you have elevated cortisol, you gain abdominal adiposity. So you gain belly fat under stress, which is a delight. And that can be also because, under stress, your thyroid can't work right. And so you have essentially weight loss resistance and things like that happening. So this all happened to me as well. And I had to really stop and feel good, because if I was trying to do things, and people say this all the time, like once they get past their 30s, they say, well, what I did in my 20s, I could be restrictive and exercise more and it would work. And in your 30s, it doesn't happen because you've already been putting it under stress for a long time. So you're like, shit, that doesn't work anymore, in my 30s, 40s, et cetera, right? We have a different body composition but I think of it as like, we create a lot of friction when we're trying to work against and hate on our body, which is like literally been the anthem of the last several decades, is like, let's hate on our body and not like it the way it is. And that feels kind of woo, and people don't really like to hear that. But I wasn't able to change my body composition sustainably until I worked with my body and instead of against it. And that's what you saw too.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me, I would say, 12, 13 months of really earning trust in my body again before I was able to start to see composition change, which is the phase that I'm in now. And that's the best way that I describe it to women, is you broke trust in your body. And that's okay, because a lot of us have done that just with what we've been conditioned to do, what we've been taught, and what we've learned is the right thing to do. And then when we realize it's not the right thing, sometimes we're 10 years into it and it's a lot of frustration. But it's understanding that if you had somebody in your life that you didn't know what they were going to get, most of us, our bodies don't know what they're going to get from day to day. Am I going to get 1,000 calories? Am I going to get 3,000? Am I going to be stressed? Am I not going to be stressed? So if you had somebody in your life that was a little bit of a firecracker and you didn't know what they were going to get, and maybe they had consistently broke trust with you. If you think about a relationship where you consistently break trust, that takes time to rebuild, and our bodies work the same way. You have to start thinking of like your relationship with your body as a true relationship and nourish it and love it and give it what it needs and earn trust back in it. And those things take time. Even though we don't want to think it take time, it's actually in the long run, if you compare it to what you've been doing, it's actually the fast track.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple places we could go here. And I don't know if we covered some of this. So one of the bullet points I have here is weight loss in terms of calories versus hormones. We were just talking about cortisol as a stress hormone. What else do you want to say about this topic?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I just did some content on it as you have two sides of the internet, right? One side of the internet is like, if you want weight loss, you have to be in a calorie deficit. And the other side of the internet is like, if you want your body, to work properly and you want the eventual weight loss, you have to only focus on your hormones and nourishing them. And I think both sides are right. There's no question that you have to be in a calorie deficit in order to see weight loss or the composition change you want. I'm not arguing that. But how your body handles that calorie deficit, your hunger levels, your energy levels, your sleep, your stress, all of that is dependent on your hormones. And most women that I work with aren't in a position where their body can handle a calorie deficit really well. So when they say it's not working, or maybe you've been in one and you feel absolutely terrible, it's because you're not focusing on your hormones. And maybe you've been focusing on your hormones like crazy and all of that's in place, but you're in more of a calorie maintenance. You're not going to see it either. So I think both equally play a role, and it's understanding and making a decision of where your body is at right now. And I think this is the value of working with a coach, because we can meet you where you're at and really put the pieces of the puzzle together of what your body needs, instead of trying to listen to influencer X, Y, and Z online and create your own plan.
I think this makes so much sense. Your body can handle certain things if it's not completely under stress. So I'm just kind of emphasizing or underlining, can your body even handle changing its composition if those basics, if those AM and PM patterns, et cetera, don't make it feel safe? And this makes me think of a client asked me this recently, and she was like, oh, I am gaining some weight. Do you think I should be concerned about this? And knowing her history, which was so deprived in so many ways and like literally malnourished. I mean, she was, in no other way to say it, just literally malnourished. And what happens is so much can happen. But I sometimes use this, and this is a bit of a buzzword because we all like buzzwords, but there's this corner of the internet called pro-metabolic. And I don't mind it because it's all about nourishing adrenals and thyroid. And they talk a lot about, hey, sometimes in order to nourish and get to that long game, you might gain weight along the way. Like your body needs this in order to feel, as it tries to figure out where it feels good. Like it needs something to work from, by the way, in order to do what you're asking it to do.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when females hear the word hormones, they're like, oh, my sex hormones. And it's like, this isn't just your sex hormones. We're talking about your blood sugar. We're talking about your cortisol. We're also talking about your hunger and your fullness hormones, right? Your body's ability to feel full will start to decrease when stress is high. And, if your stress is high, your blood sugar is off, you're going to crave more carbohydrates. Like how your body functions from an internal perspective, that is like, you won't be able to be in a calorie deficit and feel good if all of that is off. It's you're working against each other. So I think it's really starting to just understand that, like you said.
Let's talk about another bullet point, which comes up a lot. I'm sure you see it, and not exactly about it, but we've talked about the pros, cons of looking at macros, et cetera. I'm not a macro tracking person, but some people, and for some people, this is like a great fit for them. But a bullet point I have for you is about building lean muscle without tracking macros. So let's unpack that a little bit, because I bet you've seen people that tracking macros was not a good fit for them because it filled a perfectionist tendency or patterning for them. And then they were working again against their body instead of with it. So I think we can pervert or make something that could be useful for some people to making it not useful for other people, depending on what kind of other things are going on in the person.
Yeah. Makes total sense. I feel like the way we've been taught to track macros is totally off base. We use it as like the main tool in the toolbox instead of a guide or something to help teach us about nutrition. And I always take a step back with women if that's a route they want to go, because not all clients want to track macros. But here's where it can be really helpful. And here's the mistake that most people make is they get their numbers from like an online calculator or even maybe a coach, and they try and hit those numbers perfectly. But they're missing this huge phase that's called awareness and understanding where they're at. So what I have women do is if they want to track, I'm like, awesome. I want 5 days of where you're at right now. No judgments, no trying to change things for me. I'm the least judgmental person. I just want an accurate idea of what your body and metabolism is functioning off of. So give me those happy hours, give me the perfect days, give me a weekend day. Let's understand where your body is at and then look at ideally where your body should be and make the connections. But if we're never learning what's going wrong in the first place, like maybe we're like way under fueling with protein or we're not getting nearly enough fiber. If you miss that awareness phase, then you just have numbers to hit. And then you don't learn anything when you're just trying to hit numbers. You're maybe going to stick with them for a week or two and then you go off. What I do is I create awareness, kind of give an ideal perspective of where their body should be, and then meet them in the middle. For most women, let's say they should be getting around 120 grams of protein a day. If they're at 60 right now, and you're just slapping this generic, these generic numbers at this woman, trying to tell her to increase 60 grams of protein a day, that's wild. Like, nobody wants to be force feeding themselves chicken breast. So it's like for that, I would be like, how do we get 20 more grams of protein consistently? How do we get 80 to 90 grams of protein consistently for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month? And then we increase it from there. It's not what you can do short term. It's what you can do long term consistently.
I love that. I thought that was really useful. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, sometimes you're like, okay, I've got this booklet and it will solve all my problems. Let me figure out what I'm supposed to do, instruction manual, and let me just go ahead and rearrange my life. And then people are like, I hate this. This sucks, right?
Yeah.
If you don't kind of gradually figure out the pieces. But you brought up what I think is probably the most important phase of all as well, which is awareness. Without awareness,
yes,
you don't go anywhere. You backslide.
You don't go anywhere. You try and hit those numbers and then you go right back to where you were. And if you're not educating and learning and empowering yourself along the way, it's not going to be long-term change, which why are we even putting effort in if it's not long-term change?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Man, there has been some really great nuggets in this already today. I think we covered just now creating awareness when talking about macro, like the way to start with macro tracking and mistakes we make. We talked about different pillars of being high performance but your body being out of control because working against it. We talked about calories versus hormones. We talked about numbing and scrolling and patterning, traumas. Anything else that you think that we should talk about or share or make sure we cover with listeners today?
I think the biggest thing is always coming back to sort of my tagline around changing the conversation around health is that I want every woman listening to know that you deserve to feel good. You deserve to have high self-worth and self-confidence. You deserve to feel happy and healthy. And we live in a world, in a generation where we've been conditioned that not feeling good is normal, that feeling stressed and anxious and not loving the way that we look every single day and not feeling good in our body and feeling super sluggish, all of these, lineup of how women feel every single day. We've normalized this. We joke about it. We have accepted it. And I want you to know that that isn't how it has to be. And it's never going to be the drastic things that change it. But when you start to get to know yourself and dive in on a deeper level and start to understand that your health is just as much mental and emotional as it is physical, your life will drastically change. And try not to focus on the all or nothing, just like one foot in front of the other, forward motion, consistent movement in the direction, and you won't even recognize yourself in a year in the best kind of way.
Yeah. So many good ones. I see why I'm so attracted to you, aside from you lighting up the room when you walk into it and being like such a really authentic, genuine cheerleader for the humankind, or women especially. But I have a tagline that's like, you deserve things without whatever. And so I just, when you speak, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, which is why I'm happy you're here. And if you love Katy's vibe, I want to encourage you to go check out Crying Burns Calories. Where else can people find you online, Katy?
Yeah, Crying Burns Calories podcast. I love podcasting, so I'm so happy that I'm on here. And then my main platform is Instagram, so you can find me on Instagram, just my name, Katy Saltsman. Feel free to send me a DM, say hi. I love having you a part of the community.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Sharing and reviewing this podcast is the best way to help us succeed with our mission to help integrate the best of East and West and empower you to raise the bar on your health story. Just go to reviewthispodcast.com/less stressed life. That's reviewthispodcast.com/less stressed life. And you'll be taken directly to a page where you can insert your review and hit post.